All right, hello boys, girls, ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. G, and today we're going to talk about shapes in Photoshop. We're going to have our next project. We are going to open up a project and make something entirely out of shapes. Tristan, have a super day. So we're going to first go over here to Photoshop. So we're going to jump over to Photoshop. First thing we're going to do is go ahead and make a new image. We're going to go to File, and we're going to go to New, and we're going to call this Your Name Shapes Practice, right? So actually put your name in there, not just that. We're gonna make it 8 by 10. We want this one to be tall. Make sure you're in inches. Make sure you're at 300 DPI, and go ahead and create that, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and pull myself out of the way here. Let's go ahead and zoom in here and zoom in a little bit, okay? Now the shapes tools are right over here. I wanna hold down. We have several shapes tools here. Go ahead and grab the very first one is the rectangle tool. I'm gonna grab that, and I'm gonna click and drag out a shape. Okay, as soon as I click and drag out a shape, over here in my layers panel, you will see that I actually get a layer that's called a rectangle, okay? Now this little guy right here, this little box there denotes that this is a shape layer. Shape layer are special in that they can only be affected by the shapes tools, right? So if I want to go over here and change the color or something, I'm gonna have to use the shape tool to do that, okay? As soon as I make a shape, I see right down here, my stroke and my fill. The fill is the color that's inside of it. So if I change that to black, say, now my fill is black, okay? You also see up here in your control bar that information is mimicked up here as it is right down here in the floating bar, okay? You have the stroke. The stroke is the outline around the box. So around the box is gonna have an outline. Right now it's set to no outline. So let's say I want a pink outline and I want that to be 30 pixels, right? So now I have a black fill and I have a pink stroke that's 31 pixels wide, okay? So that's how shapes work, okay? Now on our options for fill, we have this pop up. We can either have no fill, we can fill with a color, right? I have my last used colors right here. Whatever populates there is whatever colors you used last. I can fill with a gradient. Gradient is a fill that just translates from one color to the other. If I want a custom gradient, I can click some of these ones in here. Let's say like I pick this pink and I go in here and I pick like this pink, it'll fill with that pink gradient, and you can choose those. You can also make custom ones by double clicking on this little handle here. That'll make your color picker come up here. Let's say I want this green here, and I say okay. If I want to go right here and I want to change that color, on this side, I can double click on that guy, and let's say I want to make it pink, so now it's pink to green, okay? If you want to add more colors to your gradient, you can just click underneath it. It'll add another color. Double click on that. And let's add a blue. Say okay. If you want to add more colors to that, again, just click underneath it, double click on it, and you can pick your color and keep adding those colors, okay? These sliders, obviously, if you move them around, you can change where it breaks and transitions to the next color, and you can adjust them that way. If you want a color to go away, you simply click and drag it away, and that color disappears, okay? So that is the gradient bar there, okay? We can also fill a shape with a pattern. There's lots of different patterns that we can fill them with. So here I have trees or rocks or something like that I can fill those with, okay? I don't use that one a whole lot, but it's an interesting one. Most of the time I'm going to grab this one where I want a specific color. I get the color picker is going to come up when I click this, okay? Now I have my color picker for some reason. Let's see why I've got this up here. And my color, something's coming wrong with my color picker. It's not showing up on the screen here, but it looks like I have the full one here. My little guy is saying, say okay here. See if I can get that to come up again. Huh, that's something go a little crazy there. Let's delete that there. Oh, it's because I was all the way at black on the bottom. That's why. So there we go. Now we're showing there, and we can fill it with that color. So if I pick a specific color and I say okay, then it's going to change that color fill. Okay. So there is the fill colors. Okay. So when I click off of there, okay. Now the outside, the stroke, I can do the same thing. I can have no fill. I can fill with a color and select a specific color. I can fill the outside with a gradient just like I can the inside. I can fill that with a pattern, or I can have a custom color where I go and I pick any color that I want up here like that. I'm gonna pick a yellow there, okay? So that's how, okay? Also on the stroke, I have a size meter there where I can take that size of that stroke, larger or smaller. I also have some other adjustments on my stroke. I can change whether it's a solid line or a dotted line or polka dots. I don't use that much. I have alignment here. This is going to be where it's lined up on here. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit here on this one here, just so you can see. Zoom in here. Right now it's set for center, but if I go on here and I change this alignment to the inside, now that stroke you see is on the inside of my bounding box, and if I go here and put it on the outside, it's now going to be on the outside of the bounding box. So where that is, caps, if you have ends, you can change it. We don't have any end caps here, so it's not going to really change any of those, so we're not going to play with that. But it can change the corners. I can have rounded corners, and you'll see now my corners are rounded off, or you can have like beveled corners and do it like that. Okay, for us, we're just going to leave it like that for right now. All right, so those are some things we can do with shapes. Okay, now we also have this corner radius, which I can click here and that'll give me like the numbers here. I usually don't use that one because I can actually just use my tool here and I can grab it right here and I can pull those in. You can see I can round those shapes off so that it pulls in like that. Okay, and then I can round them right back out and put them back to squares. Okay, so that's handy there if I want to just round. I think it's one. So with my shapes tool, it's going to do that. Okay, all right, so let's make some other shapes. We got squares. What other can we make? So if we go in here, I also can make ellipses. Okay, and I can make an ellipse. Okay, now I'll make ellipses and ovals. If I want to make a perfectly shaped tool, I can hold down my shift tool. So if I hold down my shift, my shift key, it's going to allow me to make a perfect circle there. Okay, so that's how you make a perfect circle. Same thing with a square. If I want to make a perfect square, I can hold down the shift key and I'll make a perfect square like that. Okay, very cool. Now you see every time that I make a shape, it gets its own layer there, right? So I'm going to go ahead and delete some of these just to clean up my area here. So I'm going to close some of these here. I'm going to delete a couple of these guys here. All right, so I've just got my box again here. Okay, go into my triangle tool. I can do the same thing with triangle. Make triangles there. If I want to make a perfect triangle, I hold down the shift key. I'm just going to make an irregular triangle like that. Great. Next tool I have down in there is the polygon tool. Polygon just refers to any shape with a multiple sides, so really a square or a triangle are a polygon. But polygon right up here, when you make it, it has a number up here. Okay, that says number like the pound sign and how many sides you got. So it says 8. So right now I'm going to make an 8. Oh no, I have my star tool set up here. Let's go up here and we'll play with this here. Star ratio 100%. Delete that guy. Let's try that again. There we go. All right, so there we have a regular polygon. It's an 8-sided shape because I made with 8 sides right up here. Okay, so if I wanted to have 5 sides, I would type 5, and then I'll make a 5-sided shape. Okay, so that's how our shapes tool will work. Okay, we also have the line tool. I don't use the line tool a whole lot because I can make the same thing line with the rectangle tool, but it's worth mentioning. You've got the line tool, it's going to make a line. Now it's going to have a fill in the stroke, but if we go and adjust this here, I'm going to show you just for kicks. With my direct selection tool, never mind, we're just gonna move past that right now. We'll talk more about lines. All right, don't use the line tool a whole lot though, because I would really just usually make a rectangle tool and I can get the same effect with a rectangle tool, so I tend to use that one more than I do the other. Okay, so I also have some custom shapes. Custom shapes also I don't use a lot. I have these presets that are up here, and I've got a bunch of, I've got flowers, trees, wildlife, and stuff. So if I want to do like this giraffe, or that's a camel there, I can just drag it out. It'll make me a camel, right? This one I'm going to go ahead and say stroke. Let's do no stroke on that. And you'll see I've got a camel shape there, okay? I don't use those a whole lot. It's kind of like stamp tools, if you will, but I don't use those a whole lot, so but they're worth mentioning. They're there if you find a use for them, okay? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and move down here a little bit, okay? So now we make a multiple of shapes, okay? Next thing I want to talk about is making complex shapes, right? So let's say that I have something and I want to make a complex shape. Complex shape I want to make is this. So I want to make like kind of like a snowman shape or something like that, two circles like a figure eight together. How would I make something like that? Well, I could stack them up, but there is a way that I can add shapes and I can subtract shapes as well. So if I want to add shapes together, let's say I'm going to go get my circle tool. Okay, so I'm going to go get my ellipse tool and I'll make one circle here. Okay, so there's one circle there. Now if I wanted to make this shape and add another one, I can go up here and I have this little set here and it says I can do a new layer, I can combine shapes, I can subtract shapes, I can intersect, or I can exclude overlapping shapes. Okay, I'm going to set to combine shapes and it's going to combine those shapes. Okay, now when I get my move tool and I move this around, you'll see that these are married together and they're also married together on one layer, as opposed to my other shapes that I've made all went on one single layer when we made them, right? So those two shapes are married together. Okay, now you saw before I adjusted my tools. I have these adjustment tools. Okay, I have a path selection tool and a direct selection tool. These are the tools that I can use to adjust these shapes here. The path selection tool is going to grab an entire path. So I click on this path here and I can move that path around. Okay, now this path is put in there. Now the direct selection tool, if I click out here, I can click on this guy and I can move just this path, right? And you can see I can move this guy around. However, wherever it goes, it's still married together, but whatever it goes, it's going to add to that shape. Okay, they're separate, but they're always going to be in the relationship where those two shapes are going to add to each other no matter where they're at. Okay, I have the direct selection tool. What the direct selection tool is going to allow me to do, it's going to allow me to grab individual handles, and the direct selection tool allows me to change those shapes and change those handles on there to make different shapes. Just my little handle there, grabbing like that. Okay, those are the difference between the direct selection and the path selection. Again, the path selection is going to make a direct selection, and that's going to be your handles. And the path selection is going to allow you to grab the individual path and move those around into different areas in your image. Okay, so let's talk about subtracting shapes. Okay, so what if I wanted to make this shape, like I want to make a half moon kind of shape there? How would I make that? Well, let's try to do that. Let's go ahead and get my shape tool here, and I'm going to make a circle shape. Okay, so there's my circle, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set this now to subtract front shape, and now I've got a little minus that says the next shape that I'm going to make is going to subtract from this shape that I have selected. Okay, so I'm going to go and I'm going to go here and select this out, and you'll see once I come across there, now I have selected it out and kind of taken a bite out of that with my other shape. Okay, so now when I move those around, you'll see I've got this, and no matter where I go, those two shapes are married together. And again, with my selection and my sub-selection, direct selection tools, I can move those around. So if I go to the path selection, if I say I wanted to make this guy in a little bit more, I can bring this guy in a little bit more and change that shape. And alternately, if I wanted to get my direct selection tool, I can go in here and I could play with some of the handles that I have on these tools, and I could move those down and adjust it this way, where I actually grabbed individual handles and played with them like that. Okay, all right, so that is your introduction to shapes. We can change colors, we can add shapes, we can subtract shapes, and we can make compound shapes by adding, subtracting them together. All right, that's our lesson for today. Everybody have a super day and stay creative, and I'll talk to you soon.